To quote those zany characters at Monty Python, and now for something completely different. Don't go away. Hey everybody, it's Paul from Fat Guy Productions coming to you as always from beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada, and today we are indeed doing something completely different. So it's different for you guys as subscribers and viewers of my channel. It's not different for me. Today we're going to be restoring a die-cast car. And this is going to take a few days, so what you're going to see is stretched out over several days. But we're going to take you through the process of restoring a die-cast car. Now, I actually tried this about 20 years ago, maybe more, and it wasn't really what it is today. There wasn't, to my knowledge, a lot of parts available. A lot of the techniques hadn't been developed. I just thought, hey, I'm going to try and make this look nice. This could be fun. And I failed miserably at it and eventually quit trying. About 4 years ago, maybe 5, I tried it again, and I found that there is a lot of interest in restoring die-cast cars. There are stores with parts and replacement decals. There's even Hot Wheels Spectraflame paint available, which is a big deal because matching the paint was virtually impossible. There's a lot of knowledge out there on how to do this, and so I gave it a try, and I had vastly improved success. And I'll try and show you a couple of those cars that I did at the end of this video if it's not too long. If not, I'll put them somewhere and you'll see them eventually. But I still had a lot of issues, things I didn't like, and so I kind of wandered away from it. Well, I'm wandering back. I've been watching a lot of people do a lot of different things, and I've come up with some ideas of my own, and I decided I'm going to restore some die-cast cars again. And so you're going to go with me as I restore the first one of this new era. And it's also going to be a first for me in that it's going to be my first Matchbox. To this point, I've only restored Hot Wheels. Today we're going to restore a Matchbox car. Let's get right to it. Okay, so today we're going to be restoring this number 24 Lesney Matchbox Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow. As you can see, the car is fairly rough. It's not the worst I've ever seen, but it certainly could do with a freshening up. The restoration of die-cast cars always begins with taking them apart. To be perfectly frank, I suck at it. For some reason I cannot drill the posts, so I came up with my own process for drilling the posts. I used some of my woodworking skills and decided Vicks bits would work really great. Sure enough, they do. If they don't fit into the dimple on the Matchbox, you can get a Vicks bit with a hole large enough to go around the rivet, thus kind of locking the bit in place centered on the rivet. This is great, and I'm going to do an entire video on this. So I use this Vicks bit, place it over the rivet, and just basically drill the end of the rivet off. Now on these cars, these aren't really rivets. It's part of the body molded in post. And it goes through the base, and then they kind of mushroom the end to make it look like a rivet. But for our sanity, we're just going to call them rivets. Having removed most of that mushroom part, I get a little tool in here and persuade the body to come apart. I'll lift it off, pull the tab out, and the base is free. I'll put that to the side. Everybody thinks of Hot Wheels when they think of suspension, but true enough, Matchbox cars actually had a suspension system, and this is that. Not very good, but they had it. Pop out the interior. It's in great shape. Now I chose this car because it was going to be a real challenge, and here's one of the reasons it's going to be a challenge. The windshield
is riveted in, so I'm going to have to get that out of there without breaking the windshield and without riveting through the roof. Also, because the grill is a separate piece that's held in with 2 rivets and this little tab. Very, very carefully with the drill and a drill bit, I'll remove a little bit of the tab that is holding the windshield in place. Screw this up, you're going to go right through the roof. Once I've got that removed, I'll help persuade the windshield out with a little prying tool until it just pops out like that. For these little tiny rivets on the grill, I'll turn back to my Vicks bit. It'll center me right over them. Nice and easy. No wandering, no trouble, no nothing. With that extra material from those rivets removed, I can just kind of push those out. I'll lift on that tab a little bit, and the whole grill will pop right off. Like so. I said I chose this car for the issues it would have, and here's one of them, the color. This color, if you look at it carefully, is more than just like a transparent color. There's almost like a metallic material underneath it. Matching it is going to be virtually impossible, so I'm not even going to try. I'm just going to get in the ballpark using my best guess, and I'm not going to worry about it. Now on to another issue. The post. This post is really, really short because the car has a working trunk. So I'm left with 2 choices. I can glue the car back together, or I can drill right through the trunk. You see how little material there's going to be there. I've decided I'm going to go ahead and just drill right through the post and into the trunk. First of all, I doubt I'll be opening the trunk much, if at all. And second of all, even if I do open it, you're just going to see the little end of a screw head. I would rather have that and be able to take the car apart later if I need to. So I'll just take a drill and drill right in the center of that dimple, right through, and a perfect hole. I'm going to want to do all the paint stripping at the same time, so I need to get the wheels off the base. Marty's method, that you can find over at his YouTube page, Marty's Matchbox Makeovers, is to basically grind the burr off from one end of the axle so that the wheels and the axle will all come out. And that's great if you need to do it, but I prefer not to remove any material I don't need to. This is such a small amount of material, I'm just going to use a pair of smooth-jawed pliers, and I'm going to kind of go around squeezing that down until I can get the tire off. This way I'm not actually having to remove any of the material. And just like that, off go the wheels. Pull the axle out of the base, and I can take the other wheel off. I'll do this to the front and the back, of course. Since I've already determined I don't need to match this paint exactly, I can get this stripping. I'm just using a nice gel paint stripper applied with a paintbrush. I used to use an aerosol, but as you may or may not know, I have a lung disease from my years in the fire service, and aerosol would absolutely just kill me. So I use this jelly-like stuff, and it works pretty good. Simply brush it on everywhere and let it do its thing. Usually this stripper works a lot faster than this, but here you can see it's finally starting to take hold. once it starts to bubble up like this, I can take my brush and just kind of slurp the old paint off. Now here's something really, really interesting, and it's going to help me make a decision on how to paint this car. Look carefully right here where I took this paint. You can see that there's something different underneath the red, like a silver base. I felt like there might be, from the speckle pattern I could kind of see underneath the paint. So it looks like they must have coated the car with some sort of a metallic-y metal flake type paint, and then they coated that with a transparent type of red paint. And that is really going to help me make a decision on how to paint this car. This paint was tough as nails, I gotta tell you. But with a brass bristle brush and a couple more applications of stripper and my trusty little picks to pick off stuff, I eventually got the body clean. The body is finally starting to take shape. Just got to use a pick to get into some of the fine areas and get that paint out of there. After thoroughly going over the car with a brass bristle brush, I'll take some 4-0 steel wool and rub the whole car down. This will shine it up a little bit and also scuff it just enough to make the paint stick better. I don't have any big amounts of damage or scratches or gouges I need to fix, so this is looking just about perfect and ready for paint. And of course, don't forget to strip the base. With all the paint gone, I give the car a quick wash with some soap and water, make sure it's thoroughly dry. Now I can think about how am I going to paint this. This Tamiya metallic silver has that speckle, so I'm going to just use this metallic silver as my base coat. Very, very light, just enough to make sure I get that look. Kind of like this. By the way, sorry about that rotten camera angle. I'll try and fix it for the red. Well, okay, this just proves I'm really, really stupid, because now I'm doing the red with the same camera angle. To do the red, I'm using Tamiya's transparent red. I'm adding a little bit of smoke. I'm also thinning it with Tamiya X20 thinner, and I'm putting about 5 to 7 drops of Mr. Color self-leveling thinner in there. You can see the first coats are really, really light, from a tack coat down to some super, super light coats. And again, I apologize about the stupid camera angle. I'll fix it for the clear coat. Each layer of red gets heavier and heavier until the very last layer, which is a beautiful, smooth, wet coat. And look at this finish. Wow, I couldn't be happier with this. I probably don't even need to clear coat it, but I'm gonna. Alright, I'm gonna leave that paint to dry for about a day before I put the clear coat on, so I can turn my attention to this windshield. Now, it's really not that bad, but it sure wouldn't hurt to give it a quick polishing. I use Flitz polish on my coin rings, and it works for fiberglass and plastic, so I thought it might be really great here as well, and it didn't let me down. I'll just apply it with a Q-tip and buff it out as well as I can using the Q-tip and making sure I get the inside and outside of all the window surfaces. After polishing and removing most of the polish with a paper towel, I'll use a piece of flannel and really give it a good shining. And once I have it the way I want it, I'll give it a wash in some warm soap and water. Now that she's clean and dry, she looks pretty great. But I think we can do better. This is gauzy. This is a product that model builders use, and we dip aircraft canopies, car windows, you name it, we dip it in gauzy, and it makes that clear stuff just shine and look amazing. All you really got to do is just kind of dunk the part in there, wick off the excess, and let it dry. Alright, I'm going to dip the windshield into the gauzy really slowly, and I'm going to try and avoid any bubbles. I'm going to pull it out nice and easy, let it drain off. Then I'm going to take it over to a paper towel, and I'm going to use wicking action, and I'm just going to kind of let a corner of it drain off the excess. You can see that wicking, that capillary action, pulling the excess gauzy off the windshield. I'm just trying to get rid of as much of the excess as possible, and also being really, really careful with the surfaces. I don't want anything to touch them at this point. Once I've got rid of most of the excess, I'm just going to put the windshield down on a paper plate and cover it so no dust or woolly boogers float down and land on it and get stuck inside of it. What's the saying? Fool me once, shame on me, or shame on you, or fool me twice, or something like that? Well, I'm not going to fool you the third time. We're going to lay down the clear coat, and I've fixed the camera angle issue. Now, this is clear coat from the Red Line shop, and it's the urethane that they use to make their Spectraflame paints. But just clear, this stuff is easy to paint on, dries beautifully glossy and clear and hard as a rock. So after mixing up a batch, I'm going to kind of mist the entire car. Not being too careful right now. I'm just trying to make sure I get everything, gets a little bit of a tack coat here. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start laying this paint down a little thicker at a time for a couple coats. And what you're really looking for is a beautiful, smooth, wet coat to finish this thing off. If you do it right, it's going to need next to no sanding or polishing at all. The trick is to have the right light. And I'm going to catch a really great shot of that. If you have the right light, you can actually see the paint going down perfectly. If it goes down and it looks sort of dry and powdery, you're not putting it on heavy enough. You want to go just enough that it goes down wet and smooth. Now, how does that look? Wow. Beautiful red. You can see the metallic look underneath that red. And look at the shine on that thing. I know it's still wet, but seriously, this is going to be beautiful. Now, it's really, really important. Put this sucker away. I'm going to leave it for at least 3 days. But after that 3 days, this finish is going to be rock hard. 3 days doesn't mean vacation time. 3 days just means we can work on some of the other things. Here we're going to pop the wheels out of the tires. The chrome finish on them is just horrible. It looks like hell, and the tires are in really great shape. So I really need to do something with these wheels. So just take something to push opposite the tire and it'll pop out. I can drop it all into some warm soapy water to clean everything up. My interior looked great, but let's not forget it. Make sure we clean it too. After taking them out of the soapy water and drying them off, look how nice these tires look. Wow. Not bad for as old as they are. It's been over 24 hours, so we can also take a peek and see how the windshield came out. Look at that. You almost can't see it. It's like Wonder Woman's airplane or something. And of course, don't forget the axles. A little 4.0 steel wool, and rub them like you're, well, I don't know quite how to say that. So just go back and forth, I guess. That'll work. Don't forget to get the little, don't forget to get the knob at the end. Okay, I think we should move on from that, because there's no good way to describe that without it sounding perverted. So, polish your axles. Okay, moving on. Now the grill. First I took the brass bristle brush and I really gave this a once over. And then a little bit of flitz and my rotary tool. And I'm going to polish this sucker up. Now the problem with this is the same metal that the body of the car is made out of, and it's going to oxidize pretty badly. So we've got to do something with that. So after I'm done polishing this thing, I'm going to wash it in warm soapy water to get off any of the residual polish, and then I'm going to spray it with a clear coat, just to make sure that it slows down that oxidation process. Make sure you get all sides, front, back, top, bottom, left, right, whatever, even if it's not going to be seen. And would I be wrong in saying that this looks sort of like a diamond or something? How beautiful is that? And on that metallic red, it is going to look amazing, right? I didn't put too much effort into the base. I primed it with Tamiya Fine Primer, and then just took a rattle can of gloss black from, I think it was Krylon, and gave it a good coating, and that's about all it's going to get. Now off camera I did some experiments with these wheels, and I couldn't come up with anything that I liked, so I'm going to do this. We're going to take a little bit of super clean, put it in a bowl with the wheels, and that is going to strip the chrome right off of those little wheels. I think by getting the chrome off, I can get a better surface. It doesn't take too long, and before you know it, all the chrome is gone. It's like magic. Love that stuff. By the way, it can also take paint off models without damaging them. After removing them from the super clean, I gave them a quick wash in some warm soapy water, let them dry, put them on some toothpicks, and painted them with a Molotow chrome pen. I set those aside to dry for about 2 days, I think it was. Now that they're fully dry, I still don't want to really touch them, so I'm using a toothpick from the other side to put them back through the tires. And then I'll just twist the toothpick out. This way I can get it back into the tire without putting a big fingerprint all over it. Look how nice that looked. So putting the wheels back into the 4 tires was the last thing I had to do. Now I'm ready to put this car back together. First thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and get the wheels back on the axles, back on the base, and seal all of that up. So I'll take the first wheel, slide it on. Once I have it on, I'll slide it through the base, put the other wheel on. I'll do all 4. Then we'll head down to the drill press and put these back on using Marty's method. Alright, Marty showed us all how to make this little tool out of a couple finish nails. And basically, this is exactly how they would have done it at the Matchbox factory. Basically, they're just going to spin the open end of the axle over using a tool like this. And so basically, I've made a little cup in the end of the nail. The drill press is running. I'm putting a little force on it, and it's just kind of beating over the end of the axle and locking the tires onto the axle. Of course, we've got to do both sides. This is a fabulous way to do this. Thank you, Marty. This is really great. And there you have it. 4 wheels back on their axles, back on the base, and looking as original as the day the car was made. And it rolls pretty good, too. Alright, we're nearing the end. We're going to bust out some 3-minute epoxy, and we're going to mix that up. A little bit of the resin, a little bit of the hardener. Mix it nice and thoroughly. And we're going to use this to glue the grill back on. From the inside of the car, I'm going to put a little bit in each of the holes where those tiny little rivets were. I'm also going to put some of this epoxy in the slot where that tab comes through to lock over the post. In this particular car, make sure you get the post closer to the top of the car, not the one at the bottom. That's where the base goes in. Now that I've got a little epoxy in there, I can slide that grill back into position, kind of press it down in there, make sure it hooks on really good. Yep, and seat it in there nice. And just for a little insurance, I'm going to take some additional epoxy while it's still wet, and I'm going to put some more over that tab. Now, because of the nature of the windows, they're fragile, they're a little dried out. If I ever want to take it back out again, I'm going to use a little clear silicone here. I know it looks white, but trust me, it'll dry clear. So I'm going to put a little blop in here, scoop some up, smear it around on the roof, making sure to stay away from the edges. I don't want any to squeeze out when I put the window back in. So it's important you don't put too much on, and it's important you don't go too near to the edges. So now I can just drop the glass back into the car, make sure it's positioned correctly, and seat it down over those two posts. The silicone will do a great job of holding it in place. Up next, my beautiful, beautiful interior. Just double check it, make sure everything's fine. Orient it, drop it in there. And then now we'll put Matchbox's weird little suspension system in there. Who even knew that it had suspension? Especially once you played with a Hot Wheel. Who knew? That just sits like so. Kind of a little balancing act. And now we can kind of lock everything together by taking the front tab of the base, putting it into the body of the car, and then drop the back down over the back post. There you have it. Now I'm going to take a little screw and I'm going to run it into the post that I had drilled out earlier. Now I do have a tap for these, but I've found that you really don't need to tap these posts. You can just run the screw in there. They kind of tap themselves. After all, the metal of this body is not that tough. So I have not tapped this post in any way, shape, or form. I just took the screw, stuck it in the hole, using my little Allen wrench to tighten it on down. And she's all locked up back together. And this is what it looks like now. From this poor, sad, disappointing little car to this beautiful example.
Okay, so there you have it, the restoration of a Matchbox Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow. It's a lot of fun to do, and with some of the right tools and right techniques, you can really take a loser car and turn it into something that you'll enjoy having. Alright, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, click subscribe, ask any questions, make any comments. I always read your comments and try and get back to you guys about anything you want to know. I'm going to get out of here till our next project, which, by the way, is also going to be something completely different. But until our next project, be good.